Welcome to the Money Savvy Parents podcast, the podcast for entrepreneurial parents to work towards becoming financially invincible to then pass that vital life skill down through the generations. I am your host, Laura, mother to 3 beautiful children and founder, financial strategist for Savvy Peacocks. Each week, we'll be delving into a new money topic to get you and your family more money savvy. Let's remove the taboo from money together. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming back and listening. This week, I'm honoured to have the lovely Irene McKenna with me, who I bumped into on Facebook, I think. Wasn't it, Irene? Is that where we...
I believe that's where it was, yeah.
Yeah, so do you want to introduce yourself about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get started talking about the interesting subject of human design?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a mom of 2 boys and I'm a parenting coach. So what I do really is help parents basically create more intimacy, connection, and harmony in their home. And human design, which we're going to dive into today, was just a huge catalyst in my own family for just shifting. It's almost like a permission slip to just accept the child that I have rather than, constantly that push to try to get my child to fit in the box that I think they're supposed to be in, that society tells me that they're supposed to be in. So in working with parents, it's really about reconnecting to ourselves and learning what's driving our reactivity, why we're responding the way we are, so that we have a choice in how we respond. And what human design offers is a perspective that makes it not personal. It's like, why is my child doing this to me? It's like, actually, it's in their design, right? And it gives that information, and it kind of gives, as I said, gives that permission slip to accepting. So I'm over in the States in New York, and we're just having a beautiful sunshiny day here. And I'm really excited to join you and share about this topic, which can feel a little woo, but it's also very science-based. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, obviously we've had a little chat about this, and I love that description, because I like a lot of the woo things. You'll sometimes hear me call myself a little bit of a white witch, but this is actually very scientific as well, which is what I love. So before we talk about what human design is and how it's curated, I'm interested to know when it was you came across it and what impact it had on you in your life.
Yeah. So I first learned about it like 3.5 years ago. I was at a women's retreat conference and I had a friend and she was talking about it. And so I had her do a reading. And to be honest with you, I didn't do a whole lot at that time. It can be an overwhelming system to do on your own. And so part of the work that I'm passionate about is breaking it down and simplifying it and having it be so you can apply it in your life. So I didn't do a whole lot with it when I first learned it. Then a year later, I reconnected again and I ran my kids' charts, and that gave me more information. And then I had a podcast for a little while and I had 2 guests on it, which were human design experts. And so that got me more intrigued. And then it was just kind of all of these steps till I was like, you know what, I am ready to just dive full in, really understand it deeply. And it was then that I was like, oh, this is starting to make so much sense. Like the way I do things, the way my husband does things, the way my kids do things. And so it was really these layers of evolution in my understanding that has brought me to like, no, this needs to be shared with parents. And the founder of Human Design actually states that it is here for parents so that we can parent our children in a way that decreases resistance, that honors who they are designed to be, because that's what human design really is honoring who you are, like who you are here to be. It is understanding kind of your energetic makeup to living in alignment with that energy. And when we can honor that energy, both in how we make decisions and how that energy flows within us, we can also guide and support our children in how their energy is meant to interface with the world. And by understanding this, it gives a lot of perspective and ability to help your child navigate things that maybe you don't understand, because when their design is very different than yours, you're not going to understand how to engage with them in a way that really allows flow to happen, so to speak, that allows ease to happen.
Yeah, so what I can understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but how you calculate your human design feels like a culmination of a few different things that maybe some people have heard about. So I know part of it is to do with chakras, and then you've got the time and the day you were born, which is obviously very similar to numerology. Bring in some astrology stuff as well, I suppose.
Yes. It's so it is a logical system based on your date, your ideally exact time of birth and location. And then so it is a combination of the quantum physics of neutrinos and the wisdom of the I Ching, the Kabbalah, chakra systems, astrological charting. So it all kind of comes together to create this typically very accurate manual, so to speak, of who you are designed to be. And when you can engage using this manual and this guide, life just seems to flow with more ease. It's not that it gets easy, right? We all have different personalities. We're complex beings, but it does have a feeling of more ease.
So when you first got into it, did you start comparing it to what numerology talks about and the different options that there are for us all to be able to understand ourselves better? Would you say that this is probably the most accurate out of what you've seen?
I actually came to human design with more of the personality test side of things. Like I had known the Enneagram and stuff like that. And so this was kind of my first step into the more woo side of things, so to speak. But it just made so much sense to me as I was learning it and as I was seeing the way I react to things. And I was seeing, of course, I ran my parents, I ran my siblings, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. So for me, this was my first step from that side. And the reason I liked this and from that perspective was because I always felt like I was giving the answers that I thought I should be, like the right answers. Like when I was doing personality tests, it's like, well, I wasn't sure I really knew myself deeply because of the layers of conditioning to answer those questions in a way that was true to me. This takes all of that out of the equation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've done various different personality tests over the years. We used to use one quite a lot at the bank, which was the disc profiling, with the 4 colors. And like you say, it can be subjective based on how you're feeling in that moment when you're answering those questions. So I love that. Okay, so let's use me as a live example then. So you've got my details.
I do. So before I dive into that and break it down, so to break down human design a little bit, it's called the science of differentiation. And I think of it as like this layer cake. And I have this foundation, and that's my big bucket. So we have 5 energy types. So everybody fits into an energy type. And this is like the kind of aura that you have, that invisible energy field that surrounds you. And its frequency communicates who you are to others. And it also governs the way we impact or connect with others. So then there's 5 energy types. Based on your type, you get a strategy. And your strategy is how you are meant to interact or interface with life. Now, if we go up to the next layer of the cake, we have 9 energy centers. This is similar to the 7 chakras, but we have evolved starting in the late 1700s into 9 center beings with the emotional side of things. So we have 9 energy centers, which is how we process energy. And whether those are defined or undefined are based on the planetary activations when you were born. So those planetary activations activate gates in your chart, like I Ching, the Chinese I Ching, and it activates gates in your chart. And based on what gates are activated, you can be defined in your centers, which is how you process energy. And where you are defined gives you an authority, which is access to your truth. It's how you are meant to make decisions. We think we're supposed to make decisions from our head. Well, really, we're supposed to make them from our body. So then if we go up the next layer of the cake, we have our profile. And this is how you physically move through the world. It's how you experience life, how others experience you. And so we kind of differentiate. And then the next layer is based on what gates are activated, gives you a certain circuitry. And also the gates and the channels are, again, another differentiation of how you process energy. So everything's kind of broken down. So with that being said, let me just pull up your chart here. So you are what is called a generator. So generators are like the life force energy of the planet. You are here to, I don't want to say like do the work, but what you really are here is to follow your joy. You are here to do work that you love and to achieve mastery in work that you love. Now, work that you love can be raising a family. Work that you love can be a hobby or volunteer work. It could be this podcast, right? But you are here to follow your joy every day and do what lights you up.
That makes so much sense.
Does that make so much sense? Yeah.
If it's something that doesn't interest me or I couldn't give two hoots about, then I really struggle to even listen, let alone get involved.
Yes. Well, and you have this, and as a generator, you have this amazing internal GPS system. So so to be a generator, your sacral center is defined. So the way you respond, so your strategy is responding, which means you are meant to respond to things outside of your reality. You are not meant to be in your head. What does that look like? Well, you're responding to things all day long, right? You get up in the morning, you look outside, you see the sun. Do I want to go outside? You feel a yes or a no in your body, or you like move towards it or move away. Like you feel that. You look in the fridge, you say, do I want eggs for breakfast or do I want cereal? And you'll feel a yes or a no for one of those. You have this, as I said, this internal GPS when you get in touch with it in your body. So you respond to yes or no situations, yes or no questions of whether something is right or you and what right for you. And what that's really telling me is I have the energy for this. This is what I want. And so you can use that to really access that truth. Your sacral response is also your authority. So you making decisions. So for example, if you're thinking about, you have a thought in your head, I think I'd love a vacation. So what that means is you don't go book your vacation. You think, okay, I'd love a vacation, and you let it sit, right? And then you go and you're talking with a friend and they're like, oh my God, we just got back from, this location, and your body's like, yes. And then you're walking home and you see a magazine in the window and it has a picture of a beautiful island, and your body's like, yes. So that's telling you that it's the right timing for you to like book that vacation, right? You're a yes for that vacation. What we often default to though is making the decision with our head, where we're like, I want to go on vacation, and we go and we look for tickets, and we keep hitting all these roadblocks. We can't find a ticket that works. We can't find the dates that work. But if we work with our body to make that decision and allow it to come into our reality, then we're ready to make that decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't like gray areas. I like black or white. It's either a yes or a no, like you were saying there. And also, once I've made a decision, I'm sticking to it. There is no going back. So that's quite an interesting kind of addition to that.
Well, that's interesting for you because you have a completely open will center, which is basically our center. So only 30% of the population actually has willpower and sticks with their decision. You are totally open in that area, which means I'd be curious that if how that was valued growing up, like making a decision and sticking with it, and what was expected of you in that area. Because so to break down centers for a little bit, where you are defined, you are basically broadcasting that energy. You have consistent access to that energy. It is reliable. No matter who you're with or where you are, that energy is consistent for you. Where you are open in your chart, you are taking that energy in from others. Okay. So, but you don't just take it in, you amplify it. So this can give you short bursts of access to that energy, but it's not consistent. It's not something you can rely on. However, those open centers are also where we are vulnerable to conditioning from others. Like if you had a parent that was defined in this center, they had access to that willpower and it just became expected. This is what we do. You could have learned very early that this is just how you show up. And a lot of what can happen in that open heart center, which is your will center, is, am I trying to prove my worth? Like, so in business, that can look like undercharging. That can look like, I'm going to say yes to this volunteer opportunity to prove I'm a good friend. I'm going to say yes to what my mom is asking me to do to prove I'm a good daughter. So it can be a lot of trying to prove yourself. From that, you also have an open emotional center, which is interesting because actually all 4 of you have open emotional centers, which means,
oh, really?
Yes, which means you don't have emotional waves, so to speak. There's not always this big emotional energy happening. It can be pretty chill because you all are open, but you are taking in and amplifying the emotional energy of others. So again, this is someplace, so you're a true empath. You can feel the emotions of others. And what that can look like is you can feel somebody's disappointment. You can feel somebody's when they're upset with you, and you can be a people pleaser to avoid feeling other people's feelings.
Yeah, that's definitely really accurate. But do you know what else I'm thinking now? You've said that about me and the 3 children, is that we are so in touch with each other. I know the minutes that there's something wrong with any one of them just by looking at them.
Yes.
And it's like I've always felt that we've got this deep emotional connection. And up until you saying this, I've thought that's parenthood, but it's not, because it must be quite rare that all 4 of us have got that.
It is rare that all 4 of you have that. And so, yes, because you all have emotions, you all have experiences. It's just not consistent. It's just not this wave that goes up and crashes. I'm defined. So I have this wave. And when I'm low on my wave, I just have to tell people, like, guys, I'm low on my wave today. Like, I'm a little bit crabby.
Yeah.
But you all, yes, very deeply feel each other's emotional experiences.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny what you say about sort of growing up and people pleasing and doing things for others. That definitely resonates with me based on what you've said there. I'm interested around the piece of like making a decision to go ahead with something, because I as you've explained there, I would have an idea, and then there might be a few things that kind of clarify that idea, and then I'm going for it. Whereas I know lots of people would perhaps procrastinate about an idea that they might have. They'd do lots of research and overthink things and stuff like that. That's not me. It takes me a couple of things to kind of show me the light, I suppose, that it's the right path, and then I'm going down it.
Yeah. And that is right for you. You want to, yes, you feel it in your body. You have a thought about something. And then, yes, you want to wait till those things show up and kind of clarify that you're a yes for them. And then, yes, that's absolutely right for you to do that, to go ahead with whatever it is when you feel it in your body.
So is there something that's in my chart that's maybe a little bit negative that I need to be aware of or work on, or make sure that the people around me are aware of?
Yeah. So I want to clarify, like, nothing in the chart is negative, so to speak, right? It is what it is. And yes, with awareness, we can kind of navigate it in our highest expression versus our lower expression. So for example, you have a defined head and ajna, or mind, which means you can have a fixed way of thinking about things. However, your head and mind are not connected to your throat. So you can get stuck in your head sometimes, and you can feel like if you try to share your ideas or your thoughts with people and it's not the right timing, then they won't hear you. Like, you can feel unheard in situations. You have an open throat, which means if you are trying to speak when it's not the right timing or it's not the right people, it's like people just ignore you. It's like they just don't hear you. But if you have that response in your body where it's like, do I want to say this right now? Do I want to offer this? Yes, right? Or you wait to be invited. When people invite you into the conversation, they're ready to hear what you have to say. And that's like your avenue to expressing yourself. But you can feel the throat feels a pressure to speak. And when you're not aware of that, you can speak when it's not the right timing or insert yourself into conversations. And it's like you're ignored. And that can feel really hard. So it's just being aware that if others don't hear you, it's not the right time, it's not the right people, and it's just to wait. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your message, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think there's a lot to learn from with the others around you as well. Like you say, is it the right person that needs to be hearing that? And I've definitely got some people in my life, it doesn't matter what I say, they're never going to agree, they're never going to hear me, I'm always going to go unnoticed. So it's understanding who you're around and what you're saying and how you're saying it, and like you say, the timing. So yeah.
And this podcast is amazing vehicle for you, because when people press play, it's basically saying, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So it is an amazing vehicle for you to be able to share and get your voice out there in a way that people are inviting you in.
Yeah, I wonder if that's why I love public speaking then. You know, I love all the audio options. I think I mentioned to you before, I'm really into Clubhouse. Yeah. So for me to be on stage and to have a load of people listening to what I've got to say and are interested is like my happy place.
Well, what's interesting is, so you have this open throat, which means you are here to be wise about communication. You can tailor your tone, your communication to the crowd. You have an ability to morph into who you need to be to share. And the interesting thing is, you only have one gate activated on your throat, and it is the gate of skills. So it's the gate of kind of talking about what lights you up and talking about, what you're here to learn and master. And sharing all of those on these platforms are so perfect for you, because you have the ability to be the voice that people need to hear, because you're being invited, because they're showing up to Clubhouse to hear you, because they're pressing play. So it is a very powerful way for you to reach audiences and have this big voice. And because your energy isn't consistent, if you talk a lot, like if you're doing a long workshop or you'll notice your throat can get really tired with a lot of talking.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you know what else I'm thinking with this is that if you really got into it and researched it, it could help you define what type of work you should be doing as well, which is part of what we've touched on today. I really like that side of it. So let's talk about the parenting side then, obviously, because I've not always been a parent, obviously. And there's two elements, isn't there? I suppose it's how I parent and then how I perceive my children and the way they're reacting to certain things.
Yeah. So as a generator, you are here to, like, that generator energy. You can go and go and go. You have a lot of energy. So you are designed to do what lights you up all day and kind of fall into bed exhausted at night. Like, you have that energy to go, which in our evolution is the energy to raise children. So you have a lot of energy. However, because you do have a lot of energy, you can say yes to things that maybe you're a no thing. You can push through when maybe you should be stopping. Yeah. Like, you can still burn out if you're not following that response and doing what's right. So a couple of things with that being said, do you say your children's names on the air? Are you okay with that? Or okay. Fine. Okay. So let's go to Archer. So Archer has an open head in mind, which means he is constantly taking in. He might be a child that asks a ton of questions, is always asking questions, has a lot of thoughts. He is a manifesting generator, which means he has that generator energy from you, as well as he has a defined throat with a motor. So he has that energy like you, where he can go and go and go. And he actually is also a sacral response. So how do you engage with a child in this way? You ask yes or no questions. It can't be, what do you want for dinner? It's like, do you want pizza for dinner? Do you want pasta for dinner? Like, and it's a yes or no. Like I have a child, because literally when you give them choices, they can't access their truth, and they will struggle to answer. And it's like, well, just choose one. But really they can't. They don't know what they want. I learned this about my son, and I literally changed to yes or no, and we can figure out what he wants so much more quickly. So that's really powerful. Again, you both have an undefined spleen, which is both our survival. It's also our relationship with time. So you have a very flowy relationship with time, unless you are hyper aware of time, because it's been conditioned into you to always be on time.
Oh no, he's definitely he's
flowy with time.
Than that. He's like, yeah, when I'm ready, very go with the flow.
Yeah. So
what does the manifester generator element mean? Like, is it in the sense that we've heard the word manifestation before, or different?
So yes and no. So it is not that they quote unquote manifest any easier than others, with the exception of this. So the throat center is basically the most important center, because it is the center for communication and action, right? We communicate through our words, we take action, and through action we manifest. So getting energy to the throat is vital. Now, that's not to say if you have an undefined throat, you don't manifest. It's just, he is meant to move very quickly. He's meant to be multi-passionate, to have lots of different interests. It may be that he starts something and then doesn't want to finish it. It could be that he's interested in a whole bunch of different things and wants to try all these things. And he's like, I'll do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. They can move really fast, but it's really about, they have a motor to this throat. So they can be really, really powerful in their ability to manifest when they're living in alignment. But truly, anyone has access to this when you're living in alignment.
Right. Okay.
He also has the gate of the fighter. So he can sometimes be what he is here to be is wise about what fights are worth fighting. However, that can also mean that he's resisting or fighting against things, as a child, as children do, and they're learning to process that energy. So, but he's all about responding, just like you. So it's like seeing something and then wanting to do it. So he doesn't
forget about things. Definitely not. So if he said to me, I want to give this a go, or I'd like to get this, I'm sure with most children you could palm them off and say, oh yeah, one day we'll get round to doing it. He will not give up until we've done it, So if he says he'd like to go and try trampolining, for example, he will go on about that every single day until we actually get to go trampolining, and he doesn't forget about it, because once he's got that idea in his head.
He has gate 35, which is the gate of change, which is wanting to try new things. And so yes, he will want to again try new things and not be able to kind of shift off of that.
He can't get it out. He can't get it off his head until he's actually done it. Interesting.
So then Violet is the one different than the rest of you. So she is a projector. So projectors are here to be wise. They're here to be guides for humanity. They're only 20% of the population, so they're not as understood. Traditional school can be challenging for them. So she has an open sacral. Projectors have an open sacral, which means she needs a lot more rest. She needs a lot more downtime. But the other three of you have a defined sacral, which means she can take on your energy and amplify it and be like super child and have a ton of energy for a short period of time. But it's key that she takes that downtime, that she also she decompresses. She's also defined in the head and mind like you. She is open in her root center. So root center is how we process stress. It's our adrenaline surges. So she can take in, like if you're stressed about something, she can take in your stress and it like amplifies it. And that can play out in big behaviors or kind of struggling to kind of navigate what she has to do. It can be big behaviors, or it can render her kind of stuck, right? Because she doesn't know how to process this energy. So that's something to be aware of as well.
Yeah. I mean, she's definitely, you said about the downtime. If we have downtime at weekends, she's quite happy to be in her room all day long and just chilling out and relaxing, whereas the boys need entertaining and they want to go off and do new things.
They have a lot more energy because they have that defined sacral. So they are designed to burn off their energy all day long and then go to bed tired, right? Violet is designed to get more rest, to have more downtime, and she should actually be in bed before she's tired, like supine in bed. It could be that she's reading, it could be that she's laying there, and then fall asleep. So if she's going to bed exhausted, she likely won't sleep well. I have a projector child who has a defined head and mind, and they can come across as bossy sometimes. They can come across as like being the commanders, or we call them the dictator sometimes for the family, right? So he has very clear, like, this is what's going to happen. Violet also is the gate of opinion. So she may have opinions on thoughts on kind of everything and how it should happen. But like my son, if we, he's 10 now, I still read to him before bed because I know he needs to be lying down before he gets really tired, or else it's going to be a bad night, so to speak. He's going to struggle to fall asleep.
It's interesting what you said there about, I mean, we always say that she's the boss of the family. Like Violet is definitely the leader of the family. It's her way or the highway. So that sounds very, very appropriate.
Yes. These children can also kind of get stuck in their head a little bit and trying to figure things out and come up with answers. And it can be anxiety provoking sometimes, where they can struggle with certain anxieties when they kind of get stuck in their head and they always have these thoughts and these ideas. And again, she has a split definition. So her head and mind are defined, but it's not attached to her throat. So that's where she kind of can get stuck in her head. So projectors do really well with open-ended questions. I'd love your thoughts on what you want for dinner tonight. The other thing is, if your projector child is becoming more demanding, more bossy, more clingy, it's likely what they thrive on is recognition, and recognition in a way that speaks to you, seeing them for who they are, not just surface level. So what that can look like is inviting them. So Violet's strategy, where yours was responding, hers is to wait for the invitation. Now this is for like the big things, in life, but it's waiting for the invitation. So asking for her advice on things before she offers it, inviting her into conversation. She literally has so many thoughts that she wants to share with you all the time. It can be hard for her to know when is the right time to share, and she can kind of butt in and interrupt and want to share. So inviting her in before you get to that point can be really powerful. Now, her authority, where yours was sacral, you feel it in your body, she doesn't have access to that. Hers is what's called self-projected. So what that means is she needs to talk things out, not to get advice, but literally to the sound, the vibration of her voice gives her clarity on what she wants. So if you're like, I'd love to know your thoughts on dinner, let her talk for 5 minutes. Well, I think I might want pasta, but then I'm thinking I really want pizza, and I really like when I have this. And the more she talks, she gets to clarity. You don't have to interject, or often we can get upset and be like, well, just make up your mind, because we're like on this time frame, right? But if we can just allow them to work through their process, she's going to find that clarity.
Yeah, see, I'm just sort of thinking back to some of the examples we might have had within the home, and quite often, obviously it's really difficult for me looking after 3 children a lot of the time, particularly when they all want my attention.
Sure. But
when the boys are talking to me about something, or I'm doing something with the boys, she will always try and interrupt. And it's always her that I find myself often saying, let Addison just finish speaking, or I'll come to you next. I can't talk to you all at the same time. And it's that, isn't it, where she's got so much she wants to say and she wants to get involved, and it's all in her head and she needs to get it out of her mouth.
She does. And because projectors also, like I said, they are the seers and the guides, they can often see a better way of doing it
Yeah.
than other people can. And so the more you invite her in, the more you recognize her for things, the more you remind her that she's loved, because they can get in their own head. And we think, well, of course I love my child, but it's like they can get in their own head of not being loved, right? Or not, having this when they're not being recognized. So the key with a projector child is to really recognize them, invite them into the conversation, ask them for advice, and then they can kind of relax because they know they're being seen versus having to interject.
That would make sense as to why she likes the responsibility of things as well. She loves to help out with her younger brother or help prepare dinner, like you've just said, or get the breakfast things out. She loves that responsibility, because then obviously comes the recognition. And funny enough, you should say about recognition, because this is a funny story that I always share. She is the one, when the boys are misbehaving, she loves to be little Miss Perfect when the boys are misbehaving. And she'll say to me, "Oh, mummy, I brushed my teeth no problem whilst the boys were messing around and making all of that noise and wrestling and goodness knows what." She'll point out that she has been well behaved, particularly when the boys are being naughty, so that she can get that recognition that you just talked about. So it's really interesting. That happens probably on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's about the recognition. And she's also completely open in her will or heart center, such as you. So it can also be a lower expression of the energy of proving her worth, proving I'm a good girl, proving that I do what you say, right? So it can be both of those, where she's, seeking the recognition, but also in a way that like proves that I'm worthy of the affection or the attention or the bedtime story or whatever the case may be. That can also play into it as well.
Okay, great. So what about my little Bubba Addison?
Yes. So he is a generator. So same as you.
Right.
Has the sacral response. So the yes or no questions are going to be key. Also open in the head and the mind. So maybe has a ton of questions to ask, is always asking. And a lot of things we don't realize is children that have a lot of questions, it's actually like if we're like ruminating about something and thinking about it, we may notice that they all of a sudden have a ton more questions to ask us, and they just keep like interrupting to ask us when we're trying to think of something. It's because the head is like this pressure to have thoughts, right? Pressure to think. So when he's asking all these questions, it's literally from either his sister or you that they like are taking in this energy. Right. So again, you all are open in the will center as well. And you all are open in the spleen, I think. Let me go back to, yes. Yeah. So Violet's the only one open in her sacral. So again, she can take an energy, she can have big bursts. And she's also the only one open in the root center, which is how you process stress. And you are the only one open in the throat center. So the beauty of this is like you can pick up on the energy from your children to kind of have that voice to your throat. So you also all have defined identity centers, which means you have what's called a fixed identity, like a fixed direction and path in life. You kind of know who you are, and that doesn't change based on who you're with or where you are. So it's just being aware. Now, because you all have open emotional centers, if you go somewhere, say you go to visit your parents and say they have defines, your children may have like these huge emotional up and downs around other people, right? Because they're taking it and then amplifying that. Often the most dramatic or emotional child is open in their emotional center because they are amplifying the emotional energy that's around them because they take that in.
Can I ask a question about that then? Because it's funny you should mention that, because life always seems much calmer when it's just the four of us and the children do everything that's expected of them. They completely respect what I'm saying. They're not very wired when it's just the four of us and everything's all under control and we're at home together as a family. The minute we go and there's other people there, you mentioned my parents, or if we're somewhere else, the dynamics change. They're completely different. And I've had some occasions actually where people have looked after the children and they've said that the way they are is so completely different when they're not with me. So I wonder whether that is something as well, where we're all so aligned to each other that's like our comfort blanket. And the minute someone else comes in or we go somewhere else or they're not with me, it changes.
Yeah, it can be that if somebody else is defined in their emotional center, and especially if they're not aware of it, and if they're low on their waves, like say you guys could be in a restaurant and somebody who's low on their wave walks by you and suddenly you're like bickering or the kids are fighting. Like you literally can be affected by somebody just like coming in the room. So if you go to your parents and they're like low, one of them is low on their wave at some point along the visit, that can play out in your children's like behavior.
Right.
And part of it is, especially because they're not used to it in the sense that at home they don't have these big waves that affect them. So the key is for both you and all of them is teaching them that you want to be more like a screen than a sponge. You want to allow emotions to just flow through you and be wise about them, but you don't have to take them on.
Right. So how would you articulate that to children, or how would you train them to get used to that?
So my son so now he's 9, but I've been working with this for probably a year now with him, and he's the only one of us that's open. So, as a child, he had humongous outbursts that just would seemingly like come out of nowhere, but he's around a lot of emotionally charged energy, right? So learning this, it meant that we would start the discussion like, just it allowed me to witness his emotion without having to fix it, right? And so I could just be with him, and now we have conversations like, is this your emotion or is it somebody else's? Like, are you holding on to somebody else? Or I start to notice where he's trying to people please, and I'm like, and we'll have a conversation around like, what you're responsible for and what you can let go of. I do talk to him about energy clearing, but like making sure he's moving his body, or if he is having a big emotion, removing him to another room of the house. Because, now that he's older and he's kind of learning this, my 10-year-old has big emotional waves. And now I can just say when he's low, I'll just be like, he's low on his wave, and it doesn't affect his brother, right? So, but because he has that awareness, but it started with conversations just gently, like, it looks like you're having, you're taking on some big feelings right now. Why don't we go in the other room? And it might be, I use like joint compression with him where I like push in his joints, which can help kind of reset his body, big body movements, big jumps, doing like jumping jacks that can kind of help him kind of complete those emotions. But it's, especially with younger kids, it might be just moving them to another room so they can dissipate the emotional charge that they're feeling, and then, re-enter. And depending on their age, it might be saying, oh, it looks like grandma's energy is affecting you today. Just remember, it's not yours. You don't have to, take that on, and just help them just starting the conversation in simple ways based on their age.
Yeah, I like that. And this could be life-changing for someone, couldn't it, when they're parenting? Because my children are still young, and I'm sure I've got much difficult trials and tribulations to come. But there are lots of parents out there that are struggling with lots of different things, and just understanding some of the basics of this could be transformational.
It is. Asking if you have a generator or manifesting generator, asking them yes or no questions. If you have an open sacral being, which are the manifestors, which are 9% of the population, the reflectors, which are 1%, and the projectors, which are 20%, asking them open-ended questions. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Recognizing that at both ends of the spectrum, traditional school can be challenging for children, right? You've got depending on what channels are activated in like your manifesting generator and your generator, they have so much energy that sitting still can be really hard for them. And also on the projector side, sitting through a 6-hour day or however long it is, where you are, can be challenging for them, and they can come home and kind of crash, especially because they are picking up energy. So especially for your daughter, making sure she has alone time when she gets home from school so she can like discharge all of the energy that she has picked up during the day can be key for her, especially. And then the boys, if they've been sitting all day, I know they're still young, but if they've been sitting all day at school, when they come home, letting them have a little bit of downtime, but then making sure they have physical activity before bed so that they can sleep, because if they don't, they won't sleep well. And then, if they're not sleeping well because they're not getting enough energy, that can play out in like those ADHD like behaviors, because they're not producing the serotonin that they need to regulate their system. And so it can play out that way as well.
That's so helpful. And it's actually, what's interesting is obviously this is the first time we're discussing my children.
Mm-hmm.
Violet does that herself. She's worked out that that's what she needs. So when she gets in from school, she's probably for at least the last 2 years, she's taken herself up into her bedroom, door closed, music on, and has some alone time without anyone asking her to do it. It's part of her routine now. It's what she knows she needs, and she's worked that out for herself.
I think children are so wise about their energy. It's parents who get in the way, and we get in the way because we don't know it, because you have so much energy as a generator, right? It could be like, okay, we're coming home from school, we're going to the playground, we're going to the park, we're going here. And she just can't handle all that, which plays out in these big behaviors. And then we're like, well, what's wrong? Why can't you go? Because we understand what we know. Same with like these yes or no questions and feeling it in your body. Like if you expect that from her, she can't meet that expectation. And so often a lot of our resistance and frustration in parenting comes from expectations that are either not age and developmentally appropriate, but in this case are not in alignment with a child's, energy, and they instinctively know how to interact. It's just it's both us getting in the way, and depending on where a parent is defined and a child is taking in, that's where they are vulnerable for that conditioning. So it's actually, where you guys are open, it's nice because like you said, it creates this even flow in the home with emotions and so when you have defined heart or will centers and undefined, you can get big power struggles because the defined can like say something and mean it and do it. This is my son. And the undefined can struggle to match that. So it can be challenging.
Do you know what I'm going to do after this call is I'm going to have a look at my ex-husband's chart as well, because the energy and the flow in the house has definitely changed since he's not been here. And my listeners will know that we had an amicable separation and divorce. So I'm not bad-mouthing him in any way, but I'm interested to know his charts, because that will have had an impact, particularly as the four of us, like you say, there are some key similarities. So yeah, it's really eye-opening. I can't wait to delve more into this.
Yes, it has been, it has both for me and my family and working with clients, it has completely shifted. And like I said, it's almost like that permission, I have found with clients, especially clients whose kids are a little older, like their teens, the stuff they have been fighting against and trying to condition out of their child their whole life is like the most prominent thing in their chart.
Yeah.
And so by sharing that
energy, aren't you?
Completely, because it's not going to change.
Yeah.
And by sharing that, it was like, oh, okay, I can either accept this and work with it, or I'm going to continue to fight against it. Like it's not going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's if someone wants to go and find out about their own chart and their own family's charts, what's the best way for someone to get started? And I'd love to hear how people can work with you as well.
Yeah. So you can run your chart for free. There's a number of sites. Some of the ones are mybodygraph.com and myhumandesign.com are two fairly easy to read. Now, when I say easy to read, it's fairly confusing. It's an intricate system and it can be challenging. You like get this body graph that shows you the 9 centers and all the channels, and it will give you your type, and you can absolutely Google the type that shows up for your child and find a plethora of information online about that. if you do want it kind of curated for your specific child, for you and your chart, rather than going off in search of all the information, I work with clients in several ways. I do what's called I call it Elevate Your Parenting. And there's two ways. It's a blueprint, which is it's like 40 to 50 pages now. I keep changing and adding to it. Blueprint that goes through the chart and explains things in and I hope an easy to understand way that basically shows like, this is the path your child is on based on your energy. And then I give suggestions for you to support them as a parent. I also go through a whole section on like how your child is parented best, and with all these ideas. And so you can either get the blueprint by itself or bundle it with a one-on-one reading where we can go into specific challenges that you're experiencing with your child, how it might be showing up, where you might be at in conflict kind of with your charts. So and then I also work with parents, in a 6-month program, which is really where I incorporate human design. And I also do EFT tapping.
Oh yeah.
To help with the deconditioning process. So those are several ways that I work with clients. But truthfully, the first thing is you can go to my website, jump on my newsletter. I'm starting to create a monthly newsletter, which has a ton of content, both on human design and conscious parenting and EFT, and just get those resources as well.
Yeah. So what's the website, Irene? Where can they go?
Sure. It's IreneMcKennaCoaching.com.
Great. Fantastic. I'm so pleased to have come across you. And I can honestly say I'd never heard of human design before I met you. So thank you so much for educating me and sort of giving a small insight as to where me and my family need that help and support. And it's definitely opened my eyes to parenting. So I'm going to do a little bit more research and I'll let you know what the outcomes are.
Absolutely. I've found that the information and the insights are astonishingly accurate and can just provide so much insight into parenting in a way that you all get to be supported.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing. Like you say, you can't change other people. You've got to accept what those other people are and learn to work out how they like to be parented and how they like to be looked after and how they like to manage their own life. We're all in charge of our own destiny, aren't we?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
I really appreciate you being here, Irene.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much for listening to the Money Savvy Parents podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please subscribe to be alerted to the new episodes. If you want to learn more about your relationship with money, then start off by taking my Money Languages quiz on my website, www.savvypeacocks.co.uk. Let's remove the taboo from money together.